Welcome to Chapter 12, Part 1. Romantic Period. Romantic period lasted from 1820 through 1900s. Characteristics of romantic music. If you compare romantic music to classical music, you will simply realize that romantic music is very personal. The composer tried to express his feelings through music. Therefore, romantic music is highly emotional. Also, romantic composers use their imagination and they picture their dreams through music. Another term which is characteristic of romantic music is nationalism. Nationalism means that the composers of the new schools tried to use folk music in their compositions. Changes in musical life. During the 19th century, there were several revolutions there throughout the Western and Eastern Europe, and these revolutions overthrown the monarchy and feudal system in Europe. The 19th century was the beginning of the capitalism. Therefore, the system of patronage was in decline. Remember how in classical period composers would have a rich patron who would sponsor their life. Now patrons were gone. Therefore, the composers had to learn how to make their own living and how to promote themselves. So, how to make a living if you're a musician or if you're a composer? Well, if you're a composer, you can sell your music to a publisher, or you can probably give music lessons, or if you are a very talented performer, you can probably give concerts. Therefore, you need somebody to arrange concerts. So the new jobs were created, such as concert managers, they used to be called impresarios, music publishers, and music critics. Music critics were not necessarily the people who would criticize the concert or criticize the artist. Music critics were there to promote new music and to write articles and reviews explaining the meaning of new romantic music. Now, virtuosi. Virtuosi are those musicians who can play really fast. Virtuosi became celebrities. So imagine if you're supposed to pay for a concert. Would you go to a concert to watch a person who can barely play the piano or a violin? Or you would rather go and listen to somebody who plays enormously fast in a way that you probably can't even imagine that it was believable or possible? So probably you would choose to go to a concert by a virtuoso. That's why virtuosi became celebrities. This is how they made their living, by giving concerts and recitals. Therefore, a lot of music that was composed in Romantic period is much too difficult to be played by the amateurs. And therefore, there was a gigantic need for music teachers. Now we are going to compare classical music and romantic music. Classical music is often called absolute music because it is abstract, it has no descriptive titles. Remember, there are lots of genres like sonata, symphony, or string quartet that just by reading the title you don't know what kind of music you're going to hear. Classical music is music for its own sake. There is no intended imagery. And once again, the important genres of classical music are abstract, like sonata, symphony, and string quartet. Classical music is music for its own sake. Romantic music is often called program or programmatic music because it has descriptive titles. So there were lots of piano miniatures composed in Romantic period that would have descriptive titles like Consolation, Sweet Remembrance, First Love. Romantic music depicts moods, images, emotions, tells stories, and pictures characters. Some romantic music is based on poetry and visual arts. So this is the summary of characteristic traits of romantic music. Romantic music is programmatic, has descriptive titles, is emotional, depicts moods and feelings, has long lyrical melodies, is highly virtuosic, means it requires an ability to play really fast. Romantic music is full of chromaticism and dissonances. So dissonant music is music which sounds very tense, and chromatic music is built on the chords which do not belong to the steps of the scale. So once again, let's review what's diatonic music and what is chromatic music. Most of classical music was diatonic. In other words, most of the chords in classical music were based on the steps of the scale. Now, romantic music is more dissonant. Romantic music is full of chromatic chords. And romantic music sounds more tense. Now, romantic music is based on complex rhythms. Now, simple rhythms are very predictable. As you can hear, all of the notes have the same value. Now, syncopated music means that the beat, the strong beat, is switched from beat number 1 to beat number 2. So traditionally, simple 4/4 time would sound like this: 1 strong, 2 weak, 3 strong, 4 weak. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, in syncopated rhythm, the stress is taken from the downbeat or the first beat and being placed on the second beat. Okay, so this is a syncopation. And the rhythms are irregular. That means that note values change quite often. Now, the orchestra, symphony orchestra, kept growing. In romantic music, harp was added to the symphony orchestra, as well as the grand piano and trombones. Opera was very popular during the Romantic period. If you look back at classical music, we studied Mozart, and it was mentioned that he composed 3 famous operas. Now, look at the list of romantic composers. There are lots of people who were interested in composing operas. So we have 3 Italian composers: Verdi, Rossini, and Puccini. We are going to study Verdi and Puccini. We have 2 German opera composers, Wagner and Strauss. We are going to study Wagner. And I want you to remember the name of Georges Bizet, a French opera composer. Unfortunately, we won't have time to study Bizet. Now, opera in Romantic period grew larger and covered various subjects. Now, the main character of the operas during the Romantic period were simple people, and operas in Romantic period were based on dramas or tragedies. If you think back to classical music, you will notice that most of classical operas were comedy. They were there to entertain the rich. Now, most of the operas in Romantic period are dramas and tragedies, once again because they portray everyday life of simple people who had to struggle for their living. Ballet. Ballet used to be part of an opera. So if the composer wanted to picture some dances, so he would introduce one or two dances in his opera. Now, in the 19th century, ballet outgrew opera and it emerged into an independent production. So ballet features solo dancers, ensemble dancers, and so-called dance choir. That means background dancers. And Peter Tchaikovsky, a Russian composer of the 19th century, created 3 magnificent ballets: Sleeping Beauty, Swan Lake, and The Nutcracker. Please watch the next video placed just below this one and learn about life and music by Franz Schubert. Thank you.